Good evening and welcome to Addiction Talk. It is our final episode of the year, and I can't think of a better guest to have on tonight's episode than Danny Trejo. When I say that name, if you don't know it, you haven't been watching movies. But let's take a look at more about his life. At 78 years old, Danny Trejo is one of the most recognizable actors in Hollywood, having starred in dozens of films in his career, including Desperado, Heat, From Dusk Till Dawn series, Spy Kids movies, Machete, Granddaddy Daycare, and The Minions. But his rise to fame came after a troubled past, which included drug addiction and time behind bars, a story he shares in his memoir. Today, he is 54 years sober and counting and has a redemption story to share. Addiction Talk starts now. And I'm joined now by Danny Trejo. He's joining us from California. He told me, Danny, you were saying you just got back from filming actually in Spokane, Washington, where it was what?
0 degrees.
0 degrees. Right. So we're excited to have you with us tonight to share more of your story. But even as I was talking to you backstage, Danny, one thing that caught my eye or my attention right away is you talked about being an inspiration for so many people. Like people literally come up to you and tell you just based on your sobriety story that you are changing their lives. Tell me about this recent story where this just happened while you were filming just days ago.
I went on a film. I always look for God in everything. And I know he's there. And I went on a film, Spokane, Washington, and it's 0 degrees. It's cold. And I asked, okay, God, why you got me up here? So all of a sudden I run into this one guy and he says, hey, I heard you about 10 years ago, Dan. I got 8 years clean. I was blah, blah, blah. And then I fell off. I've been drinking for 2 years. And I said, well, that's why God got me here. I was wondering. And that's just it. We started talking. He said, Dan, I'm going to use you for my inspiration. I said, use me for whatever you want. You know what I mean? I gave him my phone number. I said, call me. He said, well, if it was too late. I said, let me tell you something, Holmes. It's never too late, man. You know what I mean?
That is the truth. It's never too late. That's a powerful message.
You know what? Anytime you feel like drinking, just call me. We'll talk. And you know what? Even call me, even if they'll be go to hell. Your program don't work. It's okay. Just call me. That's all. And just that little step, even to say something, it's like you take away the obsession to drink. Just like okay. And man, I've talked to people till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, just like. How you feeling now? Yeah, I feel better. Okay,
let's go. Wait, Danny, you know what's amazing to me that you're this big time actor, but yet you're giving people your personal phone number in terms of just being able to help them. Are you that committed? Is it just something you feel called to do to be able to help people who are struggling because you think back about your own life?
I don't know. Maybe I'm not as big as some actors, but I give out my number. Everybody. God, it's written on some bathroom walls. And for help, call Dan. But I get people calling me from the penitentiary. Say, hey, Dan, I'm coming out. Good, okay. We'll see. Right now, Mario Castillo is my assistant, and he was working with lifers. So right now, we're both working with all the guys getting out of the pen that have done 30 years, 35 years. Because once you've done that, it's like your family's gone. You have nobody. You come out to nothing,
Well, I think it's huge that you're able to share, your story with other people. And even, like you said, giving your phone number or whether that's connecting with the people in the penitentiary. But I think what is huge about you, Danny, and I think you are the only person that I know that has 54 years and counting of sobriety. Just hearing that alone, people are like, how did you get there? Because we always hear about it being one day at a time, but how do you get to 54 years?
That's how you get there, one day at a time. You know what? When I came out of the pen in 1969, I swore to God, if you let me die with dignity, I'll say your name every day and I'll do whatever I can for my fellow inmate. I said inmate because I thought I was never getting out of prison. And then by the grace of God, the parole board says, we're sick of you, Trejo. Bring us back a life sentence. And I left. And you know what? My first sponsor was a guy named Frank Russo. My second sponsor was a guy named Sam Harding. Johnny Harris, I met in 1962. I was in prison. He was out of prison. He came up to talk. I met him there. And I remember I was all starched, everybody else was a mess. You know, they were wearing prison clothes. I had prison clothes, but mine were all starched and pressed, and I was a convict. And that means that you're different, you know, and you got money and they don't. And so it was funny. Johnny Harris, you know what, Danny? The only thing that's going to beat you to San Quentin are the headlights on the bus. And I thought that was a compliment, you know, but,
Wow.
but he was telling me, you know what? You're made for prison. And I literally couldn't wait. And I just bounced all through the penal system. And in 1968, it's when wait a minute. And I used drugs in every penitentiary in the state of California.
Wait a minute. So even inside the penitentiary, whoa.
In 1968, Cinco de Mayo, I was hooked on heroin. I was drinking. A riot ensued. We went to the hole. I remember Henry Quijada saying, I can say his name, he passed away, killed in a robbery, but he said, hey, Danny, they're going to top us. And it hit me that, wow, they're going to send us to the gas chamber. And I thought, you know, it was like, wait, we were just playing. You know, I mean, it was like, come on, guys, this is. And I remember just asking God, let me die with dignity. If I got to, let me die with dignity. And I'll say your name every day and I'll do whatever I can for my fellow inmate. I said inmate because I thought I'd never get out.
Yeah, you thought you'd never. And that's what's so remarkable. Not only, you know, we're talking about 54 years, but how you go from prison sentence, right? You said, you know, you're in the midst of this. You can't see how anything's going to be different. You go from prison sentence to Hollywood. Yeah. Like, how does that even happen?
You know, when I came out of prison, I was everything good that has happened to me has happened as a direct result of helping someone else. I came out, I was working in a wrecking yard from a guy named Frank Russo and Frank Carlisi, the owner, and me and Frank Russo were busted. We were in prison together, and he got out first, and he started working. And he said, "Hey, I've never forget," because he said, "Hey, I got everything ready for you." Now, in prison terms, that means he's got a girl, a gun, and some scores. He had a job.
So he totally surprised you. You think come out, you're not sure what you're going to do. Yeah. He has a job for you. You end up landing in acting. Was that even something you even thought you were talented, gifted at? Something that even crossed your mind during this whole journey that you've been on?
I worked in this wrecking yard. Then me and a kid named Danny Levitov started a gardening business. And then after that, I became a drug counselor. I was a drug counselor from 1973. I'm still a drug counselor. I work for Western Pacific MedCorp. And I used to work for a guy named Jimmy Pena, and Norm Sprunk, who ran the Narcotics Prevention Project in Boyle Heights. And we detoxed drug addicts. And it's funny because Jimmy hired me, right? And I always thought that he hired me because I'd be a good counselor. He says, no, Danny, they had all these dope fiends that were dealing out in front of the agency there, you know, narcotics prevention on it used to be Brooklyn Avenue. Now it's changed to Cesar Chavez, but they had all these drug addicts dealing. He hired me because he knew I fought. I was lightweight and welterweight champion every institution. So he hired me so I could get rid of them. And so basically I was the muscle, and I was chasing all the dope fiends away, and they left. So, and then I stayed working, and I went to work for Dr. Dorr and Mark Hickman, and I'm still working for Mark Hickman today. But
how did that lead you to Hollywood? Because I hear you. I mean, it's interesting as you're telling me, just to kind of flashback.
One of the kids in 1985, one of the kids that I was working with was working as an extra, and he said, "Hey, we can make an extra $50." So I got in with this one agency that that did extras. I showed up on a movie set called Runaway Train. And it's funny, I'm standing there and this guy says, hey, you want to be in this movie? I said, what do I got to do? He says, do you want to be an extra? I said, extra what? He said, can you act like a convict? I thought he was joking. You know, I said, I'm San Quentin, Soledad, Folsom, Vacaville, Chooserville, Sierra. I said, I'll give it a shot. And I took off my shirt and I got that big tattoo on my chest. And the minute I took off my shirt, this other guy, I keep saying old guy, I hate saying that. He was about 60. He came and says, hey, you're Danny Trejo. I said, you're Eddie Bunker. I knew this guy in San Quentin. And he was the captain's clerk. The captain's clerk is the most powerful job that you can have in prison because the captain signs everything. He doesn't read nothing. He just signs it. So you can send a guard out to the tower if you want, you know, and people would pay him to have a cell change or to, you know, late whatever, you know. And so, and Eddie was a writer, you know, and he was writing, what do you call it? Writs for people to get out. And he got a lot of people out of prison because of the writs. Writs have to be grammatically correct. You can't have any mistakes in them. And so
he became a writer. So he took that, became a writer in Hollywood?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And when I ran into him on the set, he said, what are you doing here, Dan? I think I'm going to be an extra. They're going to give me $50 for acting like a convict. And we laughed because we've both been doing that for years for free, you know, and he says,
so now they say, hey, can you come in and play a convict? We're going to play you $50. And it all kind of started from that moment.
Well, you know what? Eddie said, are you still boxing? I said, Eddie, I'm 40 years old. I don't want to get hit in the face no more. Look at me. He said, we need somebody to train one of the actors how to box. And I said, what's it pay? Because they're going to give me $50. He says $320 a day. And when he said that, I said, how bad do you want this guy beat up? I thought it was a hit. I'm $320. I wasn't making that a week. You know, I think they give me that a day. I said, how bad do you want this guy beat up? He goes, no, you can't hit this kid, man. He's real high strung. He's already socked some people, Danny. I said, hey, for $320, you can give him a stick, homie. I've been beat up for free. And I started training an actor named Eric Roberts how to box for a movie called Runaway Train. The director saw me, and Eric was a movie star. So movie stars are very, very entitled. And Andre Kajolowski was having a lot of trouble dealing with the movie stars because they're dicks. But you know, and Eric would do whatever I told him to do, you know, because he wanted to learn how to box. And Andre saw it and he said, I'll never forget. He goes, Danny, because he was a Russian aristocrat. This was his first American movie. He says, Danny, you be in movie. You fight Eric in movie. And you be my friend. Now, if you have a prison background and somebody says, hey, why don't you be my friend? Wait a minute. I'm not taking a shower with you, punk. You know, it's like, you don't know what that means.
You don't know what that means. And but he like opened the door for you.
He leans over and he kisses me on both cheeks and walks away. I'll never forget what I said. Eddie, I'm going to train the kid for the $320, but if I got to kiss that old man, I want more money. And Eddie says, no, they're European. They kiss. I said, okay. So when I found out what that old man did for me by giving me that SAG card, I'd have come over.
He gave you your first SAG card, opened the door for you to say, hey, you're going to come in and do this boxing. And then your career just starts taking off. Were you even thinking you had acting skills?
The first 5 years of my career, I played bad guy, Chicano dude, tattooed guy, armed robber, mean guy. I played all, and it was like, it was funny. The first half of my life was just like a character study of what I was going to do. And every movie I came on, a director would say, oh, take off your shirt, because they all knew my tattoo. I did every prison movies from 1985 to about 1989, or I mean, I did prison movies, and it's so funny. I remember one director saying, Danny, where did you study? Because I was supposed to do this armed robbery. Where did you study? I said, Vaughn, Safeway,
Mm.
Piggly Wiggly, Thrifties, every place we robbed. And so it was like, wow, he never heard of those schools, and I didn't want to tell him they were markets.
Right.
So,
And you learn, but you know what? I want to go back because I know we've been talking a lot about your career and how, you got into the acting thing, but you talked about how your life, was preparation for all of these, characters that you played. So take me back to when you started having, the interaction with drugs. I know you said you were young. I've read you did your first drug deal, I think at 7. You were using heroin by 12. Take me back to how we got to before this. What was life like for you?
my family was the word macho. If you see a macho, it's got a picture of my family. Okay, that's where it came from. My dad had 5 brothers, and they were all just tough. Every one of them. It was all about being tough, and I can remember that. I can remember like they all had looks that would like turn people to stone.
Mm.
I mean, I would watch my dad look at somebody and watch, hey, what, and I developed that, and nobody ever had time. It was like I'm doing something. I can remember asking my mom. She's on the phone, going, "Hey, mom." She goes, "Shut up on the phone, stupid." And I asked my dad, "Hey, what? I'm on the phone, you idiot." We're talking. Now, my Uncle Gilbert was a drug addict and an armed robber. And I would say, "Hey, Gilbert." He go, "Whoever's on the," he go, "Hey, Gilbert." He go, "Hey, hold on. What do you want, Mule?"
Wow.
Honest to God. And nothing against my parents because they were busy. They were, working. And what do you want, Mule? That little thing. It's like when I talk you got to give kids time. Doesn't matter what you're doing. I know parents, you got bills. I know you got car payments. I know you're striving to get a better life. But you know what? While you're striving to get a better life, your kid's being ignored.
And
You
so
know,
it was that uncle who was like this big drug dealer into everything. He
that's what,
gave you that attention. So
that's,
was that like to you, okay, I want to be like him? Or it kind of led you to
hey,
want to try what he was
I was
doing?
I was 8 years old, and him, Jimmy Jimenez, and Bobby Ortega, they were out on the grass. They had a big Bible, and I walked out there to be with them, and all I remember hearing is, "Let's get him loaded," and they were
Wait,
looking.
you were 8 years old?
They were looking at this, but well, you know what? I know everybody says when I say that to kids, they go, because they know it's like people are getting loaded at 8, 9, 10 years old.
Whoa.
Because if you have somebody getting loaded in your family, they're getting their siblings loaded. It's that simple. And nobody wants to believe it. Kids, when I speak at a grammar school and I say, yeah, and I got loaded when I was 8 years old, a couple of them have already know what I'm talking about.
Wow.
You understand? And so they, they got me loaded and I loved it. And it's funny that I think addiction, it's an obsession of the mind coupled with an allergy of the body. And it's like I remember I got loaded. I was wasted, right? And then Tim Sanchez, my next door neighbor, I tried to get him loaded. He got sick, threw up, and never got loaded again. So there's a chemical imbalance somewhere where people who take drugs keep taking them. Some people take them and never use them again. And so it's like I started using drugs. Gilbert gave me heroin when I was 12. And well, I snitched. I told him I'd snitch on him if he didn't, because I caught him shooting drugs. And you're gonna have to understand, like, my grandfather was a tyrant. My grandfather ran our family, and all he had to do was, and everybody do something. And I can remember one time me and Gilbert were standing there. I was about 11 and a half. I was going to be 12. And Gilbert was right here. And he was screaming at us. And I don't know if you ever had somebody screaming at you that froth is actually coming out of their mouth. They're like insanely angry, And I'm like this, and I'm squeezing my cheeks because I know I'm going to shit my pants. And
Mm,
and I'm like, oh, I know he's gonna hit me, he's gonna hit me. And Gilbert, I'm watching Gilbert go,
mm,
and I'm looking, and he got so angry at Gilbert because Gilbert went to sleep.
mm.
He nodded out. And when he got so angry, he almost had a seizure and went into his room, didn't hit us. Gilbert woke up like, hey, did he hit us? I go, God, I want to be just like you for the rest of my life. I want to be able
Mm.
to stare at the devil and spit at him and go to sleep.
And
And
so
so,
that even seeing that, that's deep. I mean, Danny, that's so deep, the psychological
let me tell you,
impact of that moment
when
and
I
saying,
seen
I want
him,
to be able to endure that.
when I seen him fix and go into that, give me both arms. You know, I mean, it was like I wanted to be there. I didn't want to be a scared little kid. Do you understand? I didn't
Mm.
want to be as scared of my grandfather. I didn't want to be as scared of my dad. You know what I mean?
So it was almost like a coping mechanism for you. Like the
Oh
drugs became
God,
a way for you to cope.
it was a coping. It was self medicating. You know what I mean? It was like, wait a minute, man. I got loaded all through junior high school. I got drunk all junior high. I think I got kicked out of junior high about 11 times. I don't, because not all the time, but if I had cornflakes on my shoes, they knew I'd thrown up.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So it was like, that's what we did.
And
That's what
so
we
you
did.
went through your
Me and Mike Cerna did our first robbery. We were 14. We did it. We did at the Far East Market, right down the street, where I still live. And it's funny because we stole my uncle's 1955 Ford Fairlane 500, pink and white convertible. Now, can you imagine doing an armed robbery
in
in
a
a
pink
pink?
and white convertible.
And we
Whoa.
did it. We did it with a gun that didn't work. It was like the gun, you held it like this, but if you took your hand up, it would fall down. You
Mm.
know, it would break. So I remember going, give me the money, give me the money. And she gave me $8 out of the cash register. But in the old days, everybody kept all the big bills in a cigar box underneath the counter.
Mm.
And I said, no, give me the box. And when I went like that, the gun went down. Somebody comes screaming out of the back. We ran and we were like laughing, going down Lancashire Boulevard, just cracking up. And
Well,
then
Danny, you know what's interesting to me, even as you're telling your story, I can tell you're an actor. It's almost like you're telling me, I mean, really, I feel like I'm watching one of your movies.
you
You're
know what?
reenacting this,
Honest
but
to
this
God,
was literally
I,
your real life.
I've been acting all my life. It was like, because if you're if you're 132 pounds or 100 and you got to act tough, it's like, you get down, you can get down, and then if you get a little bit of wine in you, alcohol makes you as big as you want to be.
So it was
But
like that. So let me ask you this, Danny. When did you realize? Because as you said, the alcohol, the drugs, the heroin helped you to cope. It was like self-medicating. When did you have the light bulb realization? Because I know
when
you
I
went to treatment, but when did you have the light bulb realization that I can't live like this anymore? What was it for you that said something's got to change?
when I was in the hole in Soledad, and Henry Quijada said, "Hey, they're gonna top us." It's like, all my life, all my teachers said there's a lot of potential, but he won't sit still. High school, a lot of potential, but God, he doesn't come to school. Parole officer, a lot of potential, but he won't stop committing crimes. And I always had a lot of potential. And
Mm.
when Henry said that, I'm looking and I said, God, what happened to all my potential? And it just stuck with me, and I remember saying, you know what, if I gotta die. I remember this movie. It was called The East Side Kids. It was a story back in the 50s. And the guys in the gang, the main guy, the big guy, was going up the river to Sing Sing, and they were going to give him the chair, right? And Muggsy and all the guys were saying, hey, he'll spit in their eye. Yeah, he'll tell them, come get me, coppers. And Pat O'Brien had to come and tell these kids, nah, he went out like a little girl, man. He was screaming, yelling, pissed his pants.
Mm,
And I remember saying, God, let me die with dignity.
mm.
I had a reputation, lightweight and welterweight champion in this institution.
No, but I think, what you said there, Danny, is so powerful because it almost, when you said it, it touched me because there's so many people, kids, like you said, who had so much potential. Even your parole officer saying, Danny, you have so much potential and you're in the hole. You're at this moment where you're thinking this could be the end for you potentially. And you're realizing I have all this potential
And I'm going to die.
and I'm going to die and I've done nothing with it. And so did that kind of just propel you to say, if I get out of here, life
No,
will
I
be
said,
different?
I'll tell you, I said, Lord, if you let me die with dignity, if I get out, I will say your name every day and I will do whatever I can for my fellow inmate. I said, inmate. I never thought I was getting out of prison. I went to board in 1969. The parole board literally said, Trejo, we're sick of you.
Mm.
You've been a pain in our ass for years. Now look it, we're going to let you out, bring us back a life sentence. Because I only had a 10 top that time. So they only had me for 4 more years. You know what I mean? So bring us back a life sentence because they knew I was coming back.
Wow. So they just thought you were coming back. So when you look back, Danny, which has been interesting because we see like your childhood and what you were dealing with. And then we see, these moments of revelation that you have. But here you go on and you become this actor and your whole life, I mean, changes.
That director literally changed my life. Andrei Kozlowski changed my life. I didn't know what a SAG card was. I was making maybe $160 a week, and that was good money for the 70s and 80s, I guess. I don't even remember, but I was a drug counselor and I was helping a lot of people. And when I got that SAG card, changed my life. And I remember going to Dr. Dorr, my boss, telling me, hey, you know what? I got in the movies, Holmes. He said, good, keep going, keep it up. That way you can keep saying our name, say Western. Okay, cool. So he used me as I guess a commercial. I don't know, but I got a lot of people. I'd be on a movie set and I'd see somebody loaded. I'd say, Holmes, come on, let's get into rehab or let's get clean.
Well, when I think about that, I'm looking at the comments here, just somebody saying, hey, my hombre has 25 years, your long-term sobriety is possible, your inspiration. And I wonder, when you think about why you've been so successful at sobriety, do you feel, of course, I know you're going to say God, but do you also feel hope was a big part of it and having purpose? Because for the first time with the SAG, it seems like you had hope and you had purpose.
Hope was the magic word. Purpose, absolutely. And when I got into movies, the first thing, when I was still speaking at schools, I can remember walking onto a stage in an auditorium after teachers had been trying to get kids quiet. I've been at some of the worst schools in LA. Walk on, complete quiet. Wow, that's that guy from Con Air, Heat, Desperado, Blood In, Blood Out. Not so much Danny Trejo. I can't take the credit. It is those guys that they've seen in their living room. They want to see what he has to say because that's who they know. And when I start talking about drugs and alcohol will ruin your life, education is the key to anything you want to do. Teachers have come, you know what? They listened. They listened because it was you. And that's like a joy.
That's gotta be huge for you just to know that your life, like you said, your life now has turned into inspiration that is convincing young kids not to go down a path that you went down, showing them that there's hope and potential. And what do you hope, Danny, that people learn from your 54 years of sobriety? When somebody says how you did it, what do you hope that person who's struggling right now with addiction, what do you hope they walk away with from your story?
First of all, that it is possible. Do you understand? It is possible. All we got to do is stay clean one day. Just one day. Just bring all problems in to one day. I always say, try breathing for tomorrow. Go, that's for tomorrow. No, it's not. I just used it. So I can't breathe for tomorrow. And yesterday's gone. I can't breathe. It's like I'm right here today. And as long as I keep my problems in today. You understand? It's like I got it. God's got me for tomorrow. So I'm here. I'm here. I'm doing this. I did a movie called Blood In, Blood Out. I did it in San Quentin State Prison. I'd been in Quentin in the 60s. I ran into a kid in San Quentin named Mario Castillo. Okay. We talked about staying clean, staying sober. He was like, yeah, you're in the movies. Cool. And I talked to him. About 8 years later, when he finally went back and forth and got out, I ran into him on a movies. No, I'm sorry, on a Narcotics Anonymous convention. And he goes, yeah, I'm working in drug abuse. I took your advice. Yeah, I'm clean, blah, blah. And it was really cool. We became friends. And then he got liver cancer and he needed a liver replacement. His liver, they gave him a liver and he became destitute because, there's no insurance for that stuff. And so, hey, well, you know what? Move into my pad, answer my phone. Just go here, And so he became my assistant. And I get almost 9 years ago, he saved my son's life.
Wow.
My son was more hooked than I'd ever been. I couldn't believe it because of the drugs they got now. 8.5, my son was dying. Mario Castillo busted into a crack house, told a bodyguard, sit down, I'll beat your ass, and pulled my son out. And we took him to I was in Germany when I got back. We took him to rehab. And a girl named Renee, I remember calling her, and I've known her right from meetings. And Renee, I got my son, and I got to get him. Bring him. But do you have a bed? Dan, I don't care. I'll double him up. Bring him. We took him up to a place called Rim of the World. It's up in Lake Arrowhead. And I remember we passed through the clouds getting up there. I remember my son going, well, all ideas of escape are out. And this is through the cloud. My son's got 8.5 years clean right now.
Wow.
He just got into the DGA. He is now a bona fide director.
Whoa.
So you tell me God don't work.
Circle
I'll slap your face. I'll tell you right now. Atheist, I will slap your face if you tell me God don't work.
Well, you know what? There's several miracles in that, Danny, because I think about the fact that you are such a giving person. I can see that, like giving back to the prisons, but giving this man a place to live. He goes and helps save your son. And I can just tell that just all of the giving that you've done has made a difference. And, as I think back over the 54 years, what do you think has been the biggest lesson you've learned about sobriety? And does it get any easier? That is the question. Because I think 54 years, is it easy at that point? Do you still struggle at that point? And what have you learned?
The struggle is one day. And, what can happen in one day? And easier, it becomes a way of life. And once you become this way of life, then it's like, well, this is my life. It's funny. When I walk into a liquor store and I see all these beautiful bottles. I see poison. I see a skull and crossbone. I don't see, look at this beautiful. I see a skull and crossbones. People say, you want to get loaded? Oh, wait a minute. Do I want to go to prison, get naked, have to show my ass to a cop? No. See, because I don't remember the joy of using. I remember the armed robberies. I remember the shootings. I remember the burning. I remember all that, so I love it when people are, well, yeah, but I had a lot of fun. What are you talking about? Shitting on yourself, throwing up, embarrassing everybody around you. That was fun. So I talk about.
I bet you lost a lot of friends too, or people to this disease.
Oh, well, you know what? I'm telling you, it's like so funny. I'll tell you right now. When we go to a club, right, and let me have a cranberry juice and 7-Up mix. Why don't you drink, Dan? Why don't you drink? Come on, why don't you drink? I say, you want to know why I don't drink? Because when you get drunk, I'm going to take your lady home. And they go, what?
So you make a joke out of it to let them know.
Be no good. And they go, oh, no, I don't drink that much, because, basically, wait a minute, I'm alive, you're dying.
That's powerful. You said, I'm alive. I want to bring you up your book real quick before we get your final comments, because all of this led you to write this book, My Life of Crime, Redemption, and Hollywood. What was the catalyst for the book? I know,
Oh,
I mean, you
let me-
shared your story with a lot of people,
I,
but what led you say, I got to write this down? I've got to
I
leave
don't
this legacy.
I don't know how much time we got, but here's my everybody like from 8 years ago, people were telling me, write a book, Danny, write a book. And they'd send me writers, and I'd get a writer. And the minute they use the word like prolific, wait, I don't talk like that, man. I just say a lot, and so I could never find anybody. In 1991, I ran into a kid named Donald Logue. I ran into him in the uh, Hollywood Drug and Alcohol Center, right? At 12 o'clock at night, there was a meeting there. I walked in. I see this skinny little redheaded kid, and I go, hey, how you doing? He, hey, what do you mean? Who cares? Do you really care? And I thought, should I kill this kid or just leave him? I couldn't believe it because he was like 120 pounds. And I said, you know what? Hey, have a great night. And I walked away, right? 8 years later, I run into this kid.
Wait, the same kid that ended up helping you write the book?
No, listen, wait, I run into him. We're on a movie called Reindeer Games. And Vin Diesel had his role, but Vin Diesel wasn't right for the role. This kid was supposed to play like kind of a goofy guy, you know what I mean? And Vin Diesel can't be goofy. Vin Diesel is just Vin Diesel, and he just goes fast. That's all. Nah, don't make him a goofy guy. And so I remember talking to Vin Diesel, telling him, hey, this ain't right for you, Holmes. What are you doing? He said, I'm doing a favor for this guy, man. I can't get into this role. I said, well, you better get out of here before we film you, or then your toilet in Hollywood. Next day, he said, you know what? I'm out of here, Dan. Thank you, man. He left. And they send up Donald Logue. They send up this kid who had been acting. And he's going through this unbelievable thing with his wife, had a baby 2 days ago, and he's got to come up to Canada to do this movie. And he was just insane. I said, look, you're up here to support that kid, fool. You know what I mean? That's all there is to it. Now, you do whatever you want to do, but you're up here to support your kid. And so we became really good friends. I mean, we hung everything, man.
And how did that get to the book?
You became a
storyteller. You're giving me all the details.
So when we started, we were driving around, and I'm talking, and he's writing and recording, and I gave 2 chapters to my kid's mom, Maeve, and she read it and said, damn, Danny, it's like talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
And when she said that was it. And then she said, look, this is about, your story, but what about your mom? What about your dad? I said, well, that's their story. And then she said, why do you think you've been married 4 times? Why do you think you wouldn't trust me to go to the store? It might have to do with your mom. And but so we put that stuff in.
I can tell it's very deep and transparent.
How many guys have come to me, man, the same thing happened in my family home. Broke our family apart. I was so embarrassed, and it was some heavy stuff, and people have really confided in me because I put that in the book.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, you've just been so transparent even here with us today. And I can see, like you said, how your childhood and everything just led you to the moment of where you are now. And I look at you, I can't believe you're 78, first of all. You look amazing. I'm like, what? Can I look like that at 78? I mean, you got all this energy and everything.
I just finished playing a 54-year-old guy. That's cool. Yeah.
I know. I'm like, how does that even happen? Who gets that lucky? And I know you've said, Danny, I'm not retiring. So what's next for you as we round up this addiction talk? People want to know what's next for you.
I just finished a film called Tim Travelers. It's kind of science fiction, unbelievable. I did a movie called 1521 about when the Spaniards tried to colonize the Philippines, and they said, we'll baptize you or kill you. And then I got my record label. We're going on tour with Live Nations, so that's like so cool. My singers are so proud, and like Tara knew, God, she can sing country, unreal. But right now we're doing soldies.
So you're not slowing down is what I'm hearing, Danny. You told
no,
me you
hell
got a record deal. You were
no.
just in Washington filming. You're keeping things going. So things you don't see yourself ever slowing down.
Nah, my agent Gloria Hinojosa calls me her workhorse. Yeah, my workhorse. So because I don't. What would I do? I can only do so much fishing.
Right. You're like, I got to keep
I got
busy.
a putting green. I got a putting green in my backyard. I never use. It's like I don't want to golf.
You got to still keep putting your message out there. But it's good because you're touching lives because of it. And because these kids see you in films and they recognize you, like you said, you can walk into the school and it's silent and they listen. So what you're doing and keeping going is having such an impact. And if there was any final message tonight, Danny, that you would leave with someone who is struggling, who's hearing your story, what would be your final words tonight?
You know what? I love saying I would rather shoot for the moon and miss than aim for the gutter and make it.
Mm. That's good. I love that quote.
Honest to God, that's it. It's like, you know what? I don't care. You shoot for the moon, might miss, but you're up there in the stars. Shoot for the gutter, you make that. That's not that hard.
So it's about keep going. Don't give up.
I thank God we just got Mayor Bass in our in our city, and I'm helping her with the homeless and stuff and the mental health, because that's the biggest problem. Is a lot of the people out there, mental health. We deal with bipolar, we deal with autism, we deal with schizophrenia. That's a lot of the people that are homeless. And I've been working with special needs children. That's why we got gluten-free in our restaurants, because kids with autism don't do that well with gluten.
Wow. Well, I just want to say thank you for coming on Addiction Talk. I know you're making a huge impact, and we'll continue to watch you on the big screen.
I'll be there.
Again, that isn't going to do it for all of you who've been watching from your homes. That's going to do it for another episode of Addiction Talk, our final episode of 2022. Actor Danny Trejo. Make sure you go check out his book if you haven't checked it out. But as you can see, he is on a mission to inspire and to change lives one person at a time.
God bless you.